Good morning, everybody. It's great to be assembled. We have the impending, there's the light at the end of the tunnel of Christmas and a break, and it's great that we can meet prior to that and sign off on the year. But I wonder if before we start, Josh, if it's okay with you, could I ask for karakia just as we start the meeting, please? It would be great. Thank you.
Amen, noi tātou. E o ngā mano tēnei te whakamuinga tutu ki a koe mō tēnei huihui ngā amatu. Arehina mai ki au ki te tika ki te punu amatu. Atukoa mai te wairua tapu he manaki, he awhi he tiaki ki amatu. Anei mātu e tuohu nei mungi tu aruaru. Akatuku I tēnei inui, I rongi te ngōtu mātu kai whakaore I Kraiti. Amen.
Thank you, Josh. I do appreciate that. Right. Do we have any apologies this morning?
Can I take 1 minute to make a little speech?
Okay, sure.
I just want to today welcome Terry Sheldrake. So I'm not sure if you've met Terry, Bruce.
No.
So Terry is our new member. He is now the co-chair of our wastewater committee. Right. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Terry. He'll be joining our team.
Great.
So we'll do our introductions. I just thought of it. I should have done it beforehand, but we'll do our introductions over coffee a little bit later. But I just wanted to say welcome to Terry, to our little audit and risk team.
Great. Welcome, Terry, and it's great to have you here as well. Appreciate that, and I hope you feel comfortable to join in when and as you deem necessary. That's absolutely fine. Thank you for that, Riet. That's tremendous. Right, no apologies. Are there any matters of interest that people need to raise in terms of the proceedings today? There being none, can we move please to the confirmation of the minutes of the 12th of August? I'm happy to move those. Is there any, yes, Pat, thank you, Pat. Second, is there any matters of accuracy or correctness that people want to raise in terms of those minutes?
I have a couple of matters that have not been reported back.
Yes.
So on item 3.1, second bullet point, what was going to be, what we understood at the time that Tauranga District Health had not paid for the use of the War Memorial Theatre in COVID, and they would have been funded by the Crown for that. That has not been reported back. And likewise, the committee was advised that school attendance stats would be checked and reported back. Neither of those have happened.
Thank you. So that's a point, Pat, of follow-up action rather than, or do they need to be? Does that need to be noted in these? Are these minutes accurate or not? The matters arising, yes. Thank you. I hear your point. So, certainly we will. Can I just check on the accuracy and the correctness of the records at this stage? There are no others. So Pat's question is actually. Well, there we go. I must confess, I probably do skip over who was present in the sense of checking that. So that's my fault. That's my fault. Pat has raised the issue that there were a couple of matters for follow-up. Am I able to just check? Can that be followed up on, please?
Yes, through the chair, I'll probably get an answer this morning back to the committee just in terms of the amount that we absorbed and the amount that we on charge to TDH. Right. That's for that particular minute. I'll come back this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Nadine.
With respect to the matter of the attendance, that's the third bullet point on page 7, and we had that discussion about the number of children who didn't return to school after COVID. I beg your pardon, that's another one. I didn't ask that today, but it was another note. No, it's actually it's on page 6, and it's the committee was advised the school attendance stats on page 48 would be checked and reported back. So can that be done too, please?
I was not in attendance at that last meeting, so whomever was responsible for that particular report and that action can come back to the committee on that.
Thank you, appreciate that. And if we could just note that we include Pat's Christian name, please, and good due respect to Pat as well, that would be great. So look, moved Riette, seconded Pat, that we accept these with that amendment as a true and correct record. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you very much. Pauline, the work plan. Anything we need to say about that? Or James, sorry, I perhaps called out the wrong name.
Thank you. There's certain things that is on the work program as a normal agenda, such as you will see there's the health and safety update, the internal audit program, and normal the processes of the meetings will always include that. But there will be some other things that we're in the process of arranging, where in the March is to look at the highest risks that we have for a council and decide what is your top 10, and then from that there's a bit of a workshop, and then that will be within the work governance program of how that is outlined within the next year and thereafter. So that information at the next audit and risk will be more of the form of that, but the other things that's coming up as well. So that would be the only main departure at the March audit and risk.
Yes. Thank you for that, Pauline. That was something that Pauline and I have spoken about. It's been a discussion around the committee previously to do a workshop around our risk framework, but most particularly what are the key risks, the high risks that we should be as a committee having a quarterly eye and view on. So it will be a good time in the sense of timing wise, in the sense that actually we'll be a long way through the LTP, because generally your high risks or your risks should be in some way aligned with what are the key objectives, and that's going to be evidenced by the developing LTP as we have them. So that's great. Any discussion or questions you'd like to ask Pauline or James about work program going forward? That's fine. Well, I think we just take that as received. Thank you very much for that, Pauline. Do we have any leave of absence? Trying to keep to my agenda properly. To note, no. Acknowledgements and tributes? No. Any public input or petitions? I haven't been indicated that anybody from the public wanted to speak to us. That's fine. Extraordinary business. I think the agenda is actually as I have it in front of us, unless there's any extraordinary matter that people wanted to raise. No. Or notices of motion? No. Good. Or adjourned business. We don't have, as far as I'm aware, any adjourned business. A couple of action points, but we're getting follow up on those. So that is fine. Item 10, reports of Chief Executive and staff for decision. Is there anything there that we need to discuss? The Dean? Great. So we then get into item 11 and we get down to the substance of some of the stuff. So if we could deal with 11.1, please, the internal audit update. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll take the report as being read, but I just wanted to just give a bit more background on the NEMA. So we've had some more progress there with the second claim. That's there's been a few queries from NEMA around that. That's already been responded to. So we're just waiting now for NEMA to confirm the claim there. And the third claim has actually been confirmed and invoiced. So we've hopefully before Christmas should have that confirmed. And then just with the page 14, just an update on the parking process that's now been completed. We will tendering process. They're still that one, and hoping to get that finalised. Expenditure staff movements and like the restructure.
Thank you, Greg.
I've got just a couple of process questions on page 14, where we have a list of what we will be looking at with our internal audits. And we might have discussed it before and I might just have forgotten, but how do we prioritize? How do we choose what is next on our internal audit list? And my second question is, some internal audits, and I'm just going back to when I was on the health board and we had quite a detailed internal audit system, is that some internal audits we would do with another health board, and that say something that say parking infringement or something that is the same in each DHB, which means you don't have to do it again. Do we also consider shared information like that when we do our internal audits, to share that information with other councils and then also share the cost?
So basically with our internal audit program, we at this stage, we're just looking at the need. So we're responding to the highest risks at the moment. Obviously, once those risks are defined early next year, then our program will be set around those risks. So at the moment, it's just sort of looking at where we need it the most. In terms of sharing the knowledge for an internal audit space, it would really just be in the BOPLAS space, really.
There's BOPLAS, but there are also through our regional council partners, our special interest groups run it's kind of like an internal audit, but they bring in external consultants that we all pay into. So the compliance monitoring enforcement, that has every second year we undertake a review of our compliance function. So that acts in a sense of another check and balance. So there are other kind of national groups that we're part of by that way that do particular focus area audits.
Good. Thank you. Just a supplementary comment then, because and the reason why I ask this is because I see our last internal audit is the Olympic pool complex, which is coming our way, and I'm very happy to see that. So what you are saying to me is, as we see stuff coming our way, which could be high risk, we will then be adding it to our workload of internal audit. So thank you for that.
Andy.
There was also an internal audit on the bus cash handling and ticketing, which doesn't appear on this table.
So that one was the NZTA review.
Yeah.
So we have responded to NZTA on their draft report, and within that they did say we needed to do work around our bus ticketing, and that's underway in the new financial year. So the Journeys team are already onto that, researching and implementing a new system.
Thank you. Pat first, then you, Larry.
A couple of questions back from the document. Several questions all here. Number 9, and it says it was with respect to the audit report on the overall significant improvements in the land transport plan. But when we have vague comments like, however, some improvement was needed in the area of public transport, can you tell me what exactly we were meaning? And does that relate to anything over here, which I would have on the spreadsheet? Because some of that is, no, I'll let you answer that first, because I just thought that didn't really tell me anything, but when I go back to the minutes.
Yeah, so at the stage that was basically a response by the NZTA. It's not part of our program as such, but and at the time when we wrote the report, we only had a draft. Now we've got a final report. So, and we've made responses to that to NZTA to say that we would be looking at that area. So it's really just around the buses and Super Gold and tracking that in the proper systems. At the moment, we don't have that visibility with GoBus.
Thank you. My second question is number 12 on the next page. you know, which would normally, the final audit completion was held with the journeys manager. Responses being provided to Wakatota. Are we going to see that report? Because I would expect that to be reported to the Audit and Risk Committee.
Yes, correct. So that will come to the next meeting. At the stage of this report, we only had a draft at that stage. So now we've got a final report back from Wakakotahi.
But this actually says from that meeting, management responses have since been provided.
Correct. We didn't have a report.
You still didn't have your report.
Yeah.
Yet. Okay, thank you. And then the spreadsheet interested me because, and thank you for the comment this morning that the parking infringement process is completed. But Mr. Chairman, I think we need to look at how much we're completing because we've got some items on here that was here for more than 12 months. I wrote to myself, but you've told me now that it's finished, so thank you. The next item's been there for 9 months. Olympic pool cash handling. You know, how hard is that to do a review of cash handling? We ought to be able to manage that because that's an important aspect of accountability within the organisation. And in private business, wouldn't take 9 months to review their private cash handling. So can we understand why that's so hard, please?
So we actually, there was a delay with COVID and then there was also a lot of staff left at the pool. So there was a delay in waiting for them the management to respond to our audit queries.
But isn't it known that when staff leave, you need to look at everything that's gone on before? I mean, those are times, we all know and we all read that in business material, but those are the kind of times when there is risk in the organisation. I don't think that's a reasonable excuse for 9 months to do a cash handling review. So I think that we should be faster at that. And then I wanted to ask some queries about the road safety audit review. I mean, how much of that is for us and how much of that is for NZTA? And where does our responsibility lie since they control the money that we have to spend on our roads and how do they fit within that?
Can I just answer the one with the pool cash handling with it? In substance, that review has been completed. In terms of the internal audit, they have the final parts. They said this is complete as the report. In substance, all the checks and balances have been completed, but it's going through for the final publishing is the last part of it. So most of the review, the agreements with it has been there, but it's the final part. So that if the new staff is making sure, as you say, that they are incorporated into that process. So in substance, that was completed and is completed, but the final sign-off is the final documentation and gone through the new staff with it.
Thank you very much for that, because I was going to go to chairman at morning tea because I'm
No,
so.
it is indeed, but it's
Thank
just.
you.
Yeah.
No, but I just think if we're going to have an independent chair, I'm going to be really blunt. We've moved to have an independent chair of our Finance and Audit Committee to lift the level of attention to audit in this organisation. And unless we can answer some of those questions, I don't think we've lifted the level of audit in the organisation.
I think we've lifted it significantly with what we see here. We had nothing before. And
We did it
what
one
we
few
have
years
now.
ago and we went that way. And
Well, we're going that way now. I'm
Not
sure
very-
it's
So
not
if I
fast
could,
enough.
if I could just intervene, Pat, you raise a very good question, and there's a level of challenge for me here, which I appreciate. I actually wanted to make some comments about internal audit after you had a chance to have your questions.
Thank you.
So, but I'll say them now. Is that I am finding the work of Melanie incredibly supportive to this organisation, and I think in the workshop that we have. My intention is that not only do we talk about high risks, because we aren't getting quarterly reports and we've decided this is something that we need to pick up, and we have as a group discussed that before, we do need to do that, and that will help lift our focus. But the second part that goes with any risk committee is also a focus on how we as a council committee get assurance that those risks are being managed. And that's actually where, amongst other things, internal audit comes in. I think there is a good question for us to ask about the adequacy of internal audit, not in terms of performance, but potentially the quantum of resource given to it. Are there other ways in which we can achieve in the way that Riette's raised? Are there other means of collaborative arrangements which give us that assurance as well? But yes, I agree, Pat. That is actually two things that would significantly increase the maturity of this committee. Is actually, have we got a strong sense of the totality of the risk framework? And two, have we got a good understanding as a group of members as to how we gain assurance? The third thing that we have to do is actually have a strong sense of emergent risk. So we will have a discussion later on today, for instance, about health and safety, because that is an area of significant emergent risk that affects us all individually. We've got to get those three legs right, and we will be getting somewhere near your test for us. So that's something that we have to deal with right in front of us. So thank you for that question. Larry, I think you've got one.
It was answered before, was about what the improvement with public transport, what that was all about.
Great.
Because it was an open question.
Good. Good. Any other questions from folk? I'd like to perhaps ask a couple if I could, Melanie, but are there any others that folk? Oh, sorry, Terry.
Mine's really just an observation, just on that 14, fraud, corruption, bribery policy. Draft a new policy for review. Is this a reaction to something, or how is it decided and why?
No, it's not a reaction to anything. It's just we don't have a current policy. So it's just about implementing a policy within council.
It's a significant omission, if I can put it that way, Terry, in terms of our suite of policies. So it's a great one to plug. I must confess I didn't have the time to develop it. I'm probably sounding like Pat here, but I did think we hope to have one early, but it's not going to be until the end of the year that it's finalised. Are we able to crank that up a bit more? If I could ask you to have a relook at that. I didn't think we needed to take necessarily as long as that. Probably in relation to bribery and corruption, I would say let's go big and steal or borrow somebody else's, but make certain it's appropriate and applicable to our position here in Gisborne. Otherwise, we're only paying lip service and ticking the box.
So through the chair, if I may, we've got that coming to the first Audit and Risk Committee, so it is
Sweet.
Being progressed with pace.
Mr. Jimmy, we didn't really get an answer to the interface between NZTA and ourselves with respect to the road safety audit. I just asked, to what degree NZTA or Whakatau are involved, because at the end of the day, they control the purse.
David, is this something you're able to give us a lead on, please?
Sure, if I may through you, Chair. The road safety audit review is around things that were put in the previous RLTP and making sure that we have done those interventions. The road safety is one of the highest priorities that you can have under the National Land Transport Fund. So for things to be funded by that, it means that they've meant to have been implemented with a sense of urgency. So they must have been completed. And then what were the outcomes from doing those interventions that we've done? So that's an important part of us developing up our next RLTP to ensure that we've done the things that we said we needed to for safety reasons in the last round. So it's part of the compliance that we need to do in the development of our regional land transport plan.
Thank you. Right, any other questions? We've had a pretty good round, but just a couple from me, if that's so okay. Look, thank you. I do agree that'd be great, and thank you for correcting me about the bribery and corruption or absence of it policy. We need to get it going, which is great. I've probably made my key point, which actually is I'm keen that we do develop the internal audit function, because it is the key part to our assurance. I was going to say, and will say now, that actually I see, Melanie, that in the course of this year, and I think it's reasonable that you have had to have a focus with your team on some of the most extant issues that are in front of us. So I personally think it's been important that for councillors we have the assurance around things like around the claims for reimbursement relative to COVID and all the matters that have gone through there. I think the second thing I wanted to note, which again is relevant to actually upping our performance, is your paragraph 22, where the 3-year program will come back to us early in the new year. I think that's actually also really important for us to gain a sense of the broader need for assurance around a broader program and sense of what assurance we can take from the actual work of our internal audit, which is good. So that's tremendous. I wonder if I could just go to indeed the schedule at the end, and this is the received program at the moment, which is absolutely fine. I'm very encouraged about our work around data analytics, but I just thought it would be useful if you could give us a sort of a thumbnail sketch, please, Melanie, about what does it actually mean for the benefit of us as a committee? What are you doing there?
So with the data analytics, we basically take all of our payments that we've made through the bank, and it gets verified, and the data gets cleansed through Deloitte. And then we get a dashboard back where we may have a series of key areas we need to look into. But basically it provides assurance around who we're paying, how much we're paying, that we don't have any duplicate payments, relationships, conflicts, that type of analysis. So it's quite in-depth for a 12-month period.
So it's looking at, it's giving essentially an identification of what are apparent anomalies in payments going through our bank account. Doesn't mean to say that those anomalies are evidence of either error or fraud, but they are ones that warrant further investigation. Do you have any sense about how many sort of anomalies have come out of the previous one that we had to investigate?
I think the top of my head, there was probably about, we had quite a few to investigate, but overall there was only about, I think it was even under $2,000 that was a duplicate payment.
Yes.
But everything else that we verified, all the, those red flag areas came back fine.
So it's an after the event check.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have controls to try and prevent problems occurring, but this is an occasional check that we do post the event, post the payments made, but actually gives the chance to try and pick up anomalies as they go through. That's very encouraging that we're doing that work as a matter of course in terms of our internal audit. I'd open up, anybody want to understand more? It is actually quite a powerful tool from what I've seen elsewhere as well. In fact, I've used it elsewhere before. Okay. So look, there's obviously the stuff to be commenced, and actually I just wanted to affirm from my perspective the really, I guess, the addition of the Olympic pool development. That's a substantial amount of money for us in the capital program. Pools generally are fraught with difficulty, dare I say it, and not suggesting we want to put a curse on the one here, David, as you build it, but actually just also recognise that we have obviously a key stakeholder called the Crown on the other side, for which I presume we will have substantial accountability and milestone reporting requirements back to them. So that's really superb. Right, thank you for that. That's very helpful, and I do appreciate the input of the committee. Can I just go back to the recommendation? The recommendation is that we note the contents of this report. Will I have somebody prepared to move that? Thank you, Andy. Do I have a second? Thank you, Larry. Is there any discussion on the motion? I'll put the motion then that we note the report. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you for that. Right, if we could move, David, to the health and safety report, please. Oh, sorry, no, David, I'm looking wrong. Thank you.
Morena all. May I take it as the report has been read? I think most of the focus is changing health and safety, and there will be a lot of people obviously carefully considering the implications that will happen from Whakaari White Island and around due diligence. So if there's any questions, please direct them to me. But with regards to the report, I can confirm that of the two critical risks, one of them has been closed and the other one we're still waiting for the right level, the water level, and specialist contractors to do the work. I'm sure that it will be done early part of next year, if not before Christmas. So that's quite a pleasing one to know. Other than that, contractor management is clearly on the list of our key risks. Recent prosecution, 275,000 in relation to mobile scaffolding. We had an incident at the pool recently around contractors, which I'm investigating at the moment. So that's one of my key focuses, is contractor management, to ensure that the guys that we engage are doing the job correctly and they're doing it safely. Student had an influx of students recently, the summer season. Dave quite rightly said we need to put more emphasis on the driving and education for these students, which we did. We put a plan in place, and I think that went a lot better this year than it did last. We picked up a couple of students that were very lack of confidence, and we put those through specific driver training to increase their awareness. We have had a couple of serious instances with vehicles. Vehicles tends to be our number one reporting area. So the key focus of the run up to Christmas will be vehicle and driving education, and to keep awareness up until the Christmas period and over the festive period as well. I think that covers the main points in the report, but I'm open to any questions in relation to what I've just raised. It's an important report.
Thank you very much indeed.
If I may, through the chair, what I don't think we've reported in the report, but I think is worth highlighting, is that we have onboarded through the redeployment project, where we were granted $23 million from central government, approximately 173 workers, of which I asked Dave, in terms of the health and safety incidences, have been relatively minor. But we can provide that update to you at another time, or even just table this information. I think it's really important to demonstrate that with the influx of additional employees and contractors onboarding, that the team have managed to work really closely and induct people in terms of health and safety.
I'd like to acknowledge the fact that that was missed off the report, and that there was a gap there, and apologies for that. It will be included in the next one. It was important.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions for David at this stage? Be very open to it. David, can I just compliment you? Actually, I think for reasons I want to explain, this is one of the best reports I've seen around my work. And I want to say that you cover off a good number of bases, which actually I think the Whakaari prosecutions will bring out. And that is actually the responsibility of us as officers, and actually, as has been brought home to me in the course of the last week or two, our individual responsibility around health and safety. We cannot rely on somebody else in a collective sense. We all have legally an individual legal responsibility to undertake due diligence. And I'm very grateful that actually your report takes us a long way towards understanding and maintaining our legal responsibility in terms of understanding due diligence. And I think that's important, even from the fact that you give us background to decisions in effect or precedents that have come out of WorkSafe, but actually that you also give us a strong sense in terms of Section 44 of the Act, the various aspects that we need to undertake. I have just, and why I'm saying this is that I have just received a report, obviously not related to Gisborne, where we have undertaken a review. 3 officers were interviewed. The candid view of the reviewer was that only one of those officers would meet the due diligence test. So what I'd like to do is just check here now with councillors how comfortable they are in terms of understanding their due diligence obligations under the Act. I'm not looking here for people to fall on their swords. I'm conscious we are in public, but I would just like to reflect what is the general comfort level around the council table in relationship to health and safety. Because actually I'm inviting, if there is a level of discomfort, perhaps we can talk about this at morning tea or afterwards. I'd actually like to think that we possibly, in light of Whakaari and perhaps its heightening of probably some tension around board tables and councils in the country, it may be timely for us to rethink, even though we're midterm, about our obligations.
Fine, and through the chair, I'd just done a recent health and safety induction with Isaac, and I've got that available for all staff and all members of the council if they would like to go through that. Yeah.
Let me leave it as a rhetoric question for members, but I think actually we should, sorry, Josh?
No, I mean, you have said that it's a rhetorical question, but it's a very apt question. And I think more of my thinking around health and safety and where we're at is that it's a constant shift and reworking. Right? I am comfortable, and I'm pretty sure that my peers around the table are comfortable with what we know currently, but what is coming in the future, which is the uncomfortableness, and no one knows that. And everyone around this table doesn't know that. So I guess it's just making sure that, for me as a member of this committee, it's just making sure that we have the mechanism in order to be able to dissect things like whakaari, dissect things like, we have a few helicopter crashes happening around the place at the moment. Just things like that we kind of possibly wouldn't consider. I was at another health and safety meeting last night. We spoke about possible fire hazard of a building that has possibly asbestos in it. What does that look like? Something I'd never considered before. So comfortably with what the knowledge that I have, I sit comfortably with that. But the uncomfortableness comes from how we future-proof against those other things.
Yes, yeah, no, thank you. That's very helpful, Josh. Okay, I'm just conscious in this that actually it is an area of judgment ultimately, even though the Act might seem to make it rule bound. When I got to paragraph 4, and you absolutely quite rightly said, David, that it's this involves doing what is reasonable and practicable, which actually says there is a level of judgment that is there in terms of our management of risk, but actually reflecting that it's actually of a very high standard. So I think this is something that we need to, as a committee on behalf of our colleagues, we need to monitor closely as we go forward. So I would like to just restate what I said at the start. David, this has been a very helpful report, and I think it's of a high standard, which gives me a much stronger sense of enabling officers to meet their due diligence obligations here in Gisborne. So well done from my perspective. The rhetorical question remains. Josh, thank you for your input. If you of some form of discomfort, not discomfort's the wrong word, perhaps the current events suggests a bit of personal view. I'm sure, David, you're able to help, as you said. Andy, sorry, you had a point, you had your hand up.
Just a little bit more clarity around contractor management. I mean, we set the parameters at the start with how that all has to happen and how they have to have the requirements met. But as the contract goes, the monitoring of that through the contract, does that still fall on us, or does that then go to the head contractor? And because some of these contracts might go for many, many months. So are we supposed to be doing further monitoring, or once we've set these parameters, is that sufficient?
David, I think there you are.
This comes under overlapping duties section 34, where everybody's a duty on site to manage the health and safety. However, those with more influence have the greater responsibility on site. So at the pool at the moment, Dawson, contracting Universal Engineering, Dawson would have the greater ability to influence that project. That doesn't mean that we don't go down and do audits and have checks and we follow up things. That's what we do as well. But our ability to influence is less because we're not actually on site, whereas the main contractor is. But it's about all working together and reviewing the instances. As I say, we've had an incident, we'll get all together and find out what went wrong and what we could do better going forward. It's all covered under section 34 and the ability to influence.
Yes, so it's not just about setting parameters, but it's the direct answer. There's a level of observation and recognising a combined obligation over the site. Thank you for that. That's a good question. Anything else that people would like to raise? Right, I wonder if we could just move to the recommendations again, please. Thank you, Riet, and thank you, Josh. Is there any discussion on the motion? So I'll put that we note the report with our gratitude to you, David. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you very much. That's tremendous. We move to the long-term plan. You're probably sick and tired of long-term plan, eh? This is another good news item for Gisborne. Sorry if I can perhaps speak before we dive into the report. Actually, I'm amazed how far down the road you're all at. I think I said this to Nadine and Pauline last night. I caught up with our auditor, who was actually doing real audit work on our long-term plan. That is seriously amazing. So Red, I would like to just again shout out Gisborne that actually it's confidence inducing that you are on top of the game. There are many councils still trying to find when the auditor will come in. But perhaps more importantly, there are many councils that are still early in the pipeline of development of their long-term plans. So I would hope with the speed, wrong word, the relative place that you are at in the calendar in terms of adopting a long-term plan, that gives you the chance to think most. But let's test that with the paper. Let's see how we go. So Charlotte, be very keen to hear what you've got to say, please.
Morena. So just a quick update around the school leavers data point. So we're just in the process of updating the environmental scan at the moment, and we plan to send that out in the new year once it's finished. And the figures that have been referenced in it will actually be updated to the 2019 data as well. So we'll provide some more information around that when we send out the update. No problem. So this report obviously was written a little while ago, so, a little bit to update you on. So just to note, in the report itself, we had the project timelines and the risks associated with that. So there was one new risk added to the project risk, which was around the 3 waters reform timeframes and the requirements around that. And then also just to note that the timeframes that are in the paper have since moved. So yes, there's just that. And then in terms of the assumptions themselves, so we had the track changes there for you to see the updates that have occurred since the previous time that you had seen the document. Since then, we've done further work on it as well. So we will send that out once we've finalised the last little pieces of that. So some of the changes that we had noted were going to be occurring in the report have taken place, and the only ones that are still outstanding around the levels of service and just waiting on the finalisation of sort of the prioritisation work that's happening around the budgets, and then the waste levy, just waiting for confirmation or otherwise from the government around if they're going to be implemented at the rates that we've put in the assumptions, and then just to update the reference around climate change now the final report's available. But that's kind of all I've got to update since the report was sent. So thank you for any questions.
So thank you, Charlotte. Before I open for questions, just perhaps a couple of points of clarification. You've quite right, I think quite sensibly got 3 waters now as a risk on your risk table. Can you characterise the nature of, how do you folks see the risk? Is it, and what sort of rating have you put against it?
So the direction that we've been given, that the assumptions for all councils will be the same, and that we have to assume that it needs to continue. And throughout the long-term plan, all of the projects are in there as if we were continuing with that. And throughout the infrastructure, the needs and assessments are based on that. So that is our assumption, and that is how we have completed the most of it. What is the risk if it does occur? In terms of it, if we are assuming that from 2024, we would be assessing the likelihood and how we do things as we go along. And whatever that assessment is, taken from the point of view that someone takes it over, those risks would be mitigated through where we sell those assets to another body. And where the assessments that we go through, probably the other things that we take into account, and we're thinking about that now, is in terms of our debt. And so therefore, where does that occur when we're taking tranches of debt over the next 3 years for projects where we may have some release back to us? And so we will position the way that we have our debt going within those sort of 5 years or 3 years or 4 to minimise as we get possibly with more knowledge when we get to that time. So we're making sure that we have flexibility within that. The other side of that is with our debt, as you know, that our limit on debt is on our ability to earn income. And we have 130%, although we can borrow up to 175%. So what we will be making sure that we assess how much, if we reduce our income, how does that impact on our ability to borrow at any of those particular given times? So those are the kind of the risks that we're assessing, and as we go through, we're monitoring those main parts. But as to the actual ability to do the work and the business to continue, that is taken as a given.
Thank you.
Can I add to that?
Yes, go ahead,
Through the
please.
chair, I think just in addition to that, it's not only it's a risk but an opportunity, and that in terms of the assumption with steady as she goes, we haven't really accounted for any fundamental changes. This would fundamentally change the business of the council. So I think that is the major risk, that if the council did so choose to devolve into a shared or larger amalgamated water provider, then we would be cutting off a significant part of the activity in the business of council. We would then be diverting resources to be able to plan for that changeover. So it will completely change the 10-year plan as we know it.
I think this would be, again, if we were to look at ahead to our risk workshop, this is the sort of thing, Nadine, that you quite rightly raised. The real focus may well actually be, what are we when we're left without Three Waters? And there is some work going on. The department is meant to be starting its work. If it has already, I don't know, Nadine, we're quite at looking at what is the function and the role of local government post Three Waters reform, really.
Because to me, it's in this paper, but also in council's paper tomorrow, the timing is just weird. We are all halfway or nearly there to do our 10-year planning for the next 3 years. The government is injecting this Three Waters, which we are not 100% clear on, because I don't think they are. And it's not sheeting blame. It is just a massive, massive project. So my gut feeling is that it's at this stage we can't plan for it, because the timing where the information are coming out is after we adopt our 10-year plan. And it's not just us adopting a 10-year plan. Every other authority is adopting a 10-year plan. So that's giving us grey here in the regional sector space as well, because the timing is just so not aligned with what is expected of every authority. So I just wanted to put it out there. It is going to be a massive piece of work, but probably affecting us in the next 10-year plan, because we can't plan for it now.
There is some risk that within the first year of this newly adopted long-term plan, we may be faced with an amendment.
Yes, and all councils.
Which if we still had that in the room, I'd say must be coming health and safety. This is stressful on staff, let alone councillors. And you're talking about grey hair, Riet. So I agree. It is a high, I guess, to use risk terminology, it's high risk for us, as it is for the sector. Yeah. So quite right. Yeah, you're getting a strong endorsement from us if you did it already, that actually Three Waters, but actually also, and it may be a conversation for next year, what are we if without Three Waters becomes a really, really high risk there. So that's great, Charlotte. Appreciate that. As you said, this has been, well, actually, no, I was about to ask some questions. Sorry, I should open up the floor. Sorry. Do people want to ask questions of Charlotte with this process? Obviously, you folk, relative to me, are more deeply involved in this, a lot of workshops. This is really about, are we making adequate progress, number one, and number two, have we got the risks with the project managed, and number three, the assumptions. So do we have questions on those? Be able to take them now for Charlotte. Yeah, Larry.
A question on page 27 on number 2. Key staff are unable to complete critical path tasks and there is no backup person. And you're mentioning about the fact of, especially over school holidays, identify the need or the use of consultants. How many consultants have been used in that scenario, in recent time? Or is it something that it's a backup plan, or is it something that is in use now?
So currently with the consultants, it's either for discrete pieces of work. We're not actually have any consultants in terms of executing a backup plan, if that's what you were referring to. Yeah. So things like environmental scan, quite discrete pieces of work.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the paper, and I appreciate that it's quite comprehensive. A couple of us would observe that it's very hard to read, even in hard copy. Can I just ask, apart from Infometrics, have we used anyone else for technical long-term financial guidance? I'm looking at page 34, and so they're referred to in Burl quite substantially, and I'm just wondering, are they economists are economists for a reason? So how much advice have we taken, what advice have we taken to arrive at some of these assumptions?
So Bill indices that they give out is for the whole of the local government sector, but we then look in where we position and where we believe that we've seen our own forecast and what have we actually spent. So we test it against what they have given and seen with it, but in terms of that, that's the basis that we set each LTP. What are the assumptions that we are making for the rates of increases will go out from years 2, 3, 4, and 5. We assess year 1 based on actual costs, and then we do check it and rebalance to see against those predictions.
Yeah, thanks. Because I'm just looking at the first page, if you like, 34, and it talks around employment, and it says there's an ongoing reduction of employment in the short to medium term. And I know that the column then next is the level of uncertainty, and around that is high uncertainty, because in actual fact, there's quite a demand for people in employment in this town, and it's not a high level of unemployment. So it's just, and I appreciate that we have to work towards the level of risk, but I wonder, what degree and whether this is taking the worst case scenario, which of course, if it's risk, then you are taking the worst case scenario. But around, if I go to the 36 of 75, on page 36 of 75, under community health, and I just think we need to make it really clear for our public. We talk about what council might need to do, and you say there, and this is in the third column, reasons or impact on the LTP of the assumption. The council will need to consider greater borrowing and more contribution to health might be required by council. Well, at the end of the day, it's the poor old ratepayer that is going to be funding all of that. So I wonder whether there's some way, and I know that our terminology is usually council, but we need to make it really clear it's ratepayer as well. So we're saying, investment in community-based programs and initiatives to improve community health, and that really got me going, because I know we're into wellness, but community health is actually the Ministry of Health's responsibility, not ours. And we just need to make sure that we don't end up picking up the pieces for failed central government organisations or ones that'll duck for cover. And then under environment, so that I have a bit of a beef about that. And then under environment, which is on the same page, I wonder, did we measure any of the improved environmental benefits, or is that a national stat? So we're saying here, few of the environmental benefits include, e.g. improved air quality, experience doing level 3, 4 and 3 will continue in level 1. So is that a national statement? And I mean, this is our LTP.
Yeah, we can have a look at the regional data as well for that. In response to the community health one, so that column is about if the assumption is incorrect. So it's very much about what we're not planning to do as opposed to what we are planning to do.
I know,
but we can add some clarity around if the assumption was incorrect and we were heading that way, that about the impact on rates.
But it does say reasons or impact. Council may be, is it being added, initiatives to improve community health may be required from council. So that reads to me like ratepayer money. That's why I'm picking up on it. No, thanks for that. And also, can you look at some national stats? Because I don't know the level that we were at, our environmental benefits were substantially decreased. Might have been a few less car movements, but not a lot else changed. And then I found this quite intriguing. This next page 39, the service, and we just have to think what we say on one hand and then on the other. It's around service demand for green spaces. And we say that the risk of the assumption being incorrect is low, so that's good. But what we then say in the box, read it all, everybody, council may need to increase green space and recreational areas requiring unbudgeted expenditure. Well, last week we talked about closing some of them. So seriously, did rather get me going when we were doing a 10-year plan for recreational services. And I don't think we actually did plan to close too many of them, even though it was an option if we finally got groups to come together in more hubs for sport. So can we tweak the language in that box too? Because I don't think we're going to go out and buy some more green space.
Once again, that's if the assumption is incorrect.
Yes, I know,
Yeah,
but, we're not going to do that, though.
Clearer in terms of the column.
Wait a sec, sorry, can I,
But I just
if we just have one speaker at a time, Riet, and then Charlotte, I think you've got a response, so I'd like to hear that. So Riet, you're welcome to go.
Oh, no, what I was saying to Pat is this is what will happen if the assumption is incorrect.
Yes, I get that, but we're not, even if it's incorrect, it isn't something we're going to do. We know we've got more green space than we need at the minute, so we're not, even if it's incorrect, going to go out and buy some more.
I don't have an answer for that, but it is if it is incorrect.
Yeah, well, so why are we saying that's incorrect? You know, because that's my point entirely. Even if it is incorrect, and that's what the box says.
Maybe Charlotte can clarify that. We didn't know.
Yeah, we're not going to go buying more green space, even if it is incorrect, because we've got truckloads of green space now, more than we say we can afford to maintain.
It also uses the word may. It's not like cause and effect. If we didn't have enough, we would. Yeah. So, but we can look at that wording as well.
Pat, thanks for sponsoring this debate. This is exactly why we have it. These are the assumptions that we are taking into the planning process. And if we have a policy position that come hell or high water, we won't add to our green space, that's actually a decision that can only be made by around the council table. And let's build that in.
Yeah.
So I take your point, Pat. I mean, I think it's a very good point. I think what I'm trying to reflect here is the value of a detailed assumption table coming out, which actually gives us the chance to continually check, are these assumptions still valid? I don't think as an audit risk committee we're going to decide whether you will or will not invest into more green space if the negative, as you quite rightly hear, it comes to bear. Would you actually activate the may? But it's helpful if actually the answer has come, you know, as I said, come hell or high water, you're not going to. Let's get that in there. You're starting to understand better what actually, and they will describe better to your community, what are the assumptions that you've got.
Yeah, so isn't the assumption itself might need tweaking?
Yeah. So through the chair, in that particular one, to make it clear, the assumption would be in the first assumption box that council does have a high level of open space reserve land per capita, and therefore further investment may not be required.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay. As I say, good. It's starting to tie down the basis on which this plan is being presented, and ultimately for the informed reader, we can be clear with them about the assumptions that we've brought to bear. Thank you there, Pat. Very, very good discussion of that. So did you have other questions?
No, I have one or two, but I mean, it's my script. I'm a bit keen on detail.
I don't have any trouble with being keen on detail.
No, I'll leave it.
Are there any other questions that folk would like to raise? Charlotte, from this side, can we help you? Is there anything in this particularly that you'd like to direct our attention to at this point around assumptions particularly that you would like our view on at the moment?
No, not on the assumption.
Thank you. Yes, Pat.
I've just found one that I do think you need to look at. Maybe Sandra will probably agree with me, even though she's sitting there very quiet. Page 52, under economic growth. And it says GDP will continue to be negatively affected by COVID through 2021. And I just think, is that again a national stat or a local stat? Page 52. I just think that, national stats are one thing, and we have shown, even if you said may, but that says will.
Yeah, so this particular reference is to the regional report from Infometrics. So that comes from that particular report that came out in June this year.
Yes,
There
well,
will
that's
be
quite
another
old.
report since then.
Do
So
you think you get the updated one for the
yeah,
document?
so that's on that one of our list of sort of updates we kind of keep our eye on. So these assumptions will change slightly again the next time you see them.
Because that's not actually what's known to be happening in this town, in this region, for a variety of reasons.
And I think that's again a useful point. It was a point I noted from higher up in the report that actually is the mid-case scenario still relevant, and what is our view about COVID impacts, which are I certainly would think as we've got towards the last quarter of this year that people are starting to change some of their views. I think it's great, Charlotte, that you've got Infometrics, or rather you've got advice on actually what is a particular impact for Gisborne, because actually that's the best thing that we can plan on in terms of our long-term plan. Sorry, Nadine, did you have a point you want to make? No?
Through the chair, I mean, just along those lines around, because the council has been discussing the impacts in the region have been relatively minor. And so it's whether or not, how you balance what the advice has been provided, looking at New Zealand as a whole and what might impact on us in the future, versus our local reality. And really that's kind of where the guidance from all the preferences from council in terms of those assumptions that we put through in the LTP is a business as new normal-ish. Or are we going to be risk averse and go with what, the kind of feeling is across, or the data is saying across New Zealand?
Okay, that's again very helpful. I think with taking into account the comments that the assumption, again, actually can compliment you on a very good detailed set of assumptions, Charlotte. I think it's superb. Giving a strong sense, and here's the relevance that has been raised with this morning's discussions, is to keep coming back to this issue, and you will have to when it comes to between the CD and the long-term plan, if we still got a relevant point on. I wonder then if I could just flick back up to the third aspect, which is actually timing. As I said, I'm amazed that the auditors in doing actual audit work. That's tremendous. You mentioned timelines had changed a wee bit. Charlotte, are you able to just give us a quick update? Really, probably, when do you hope to have a CD that is audited and ready to go to the public? Is probably the critical date for us all at this stage to understand.
Yeah, so that has moved by around 2 to 3 weeks from memory. Sorry, I don't have the exact confirmed dates in front of us. We're still finalising a couple of tiny little parts of that.
So when I look at the audit opinion on the final consultation document at 1 March, you're saying it's more likely going to be, I don't know, the 22nd of March. I don't know whether that's the day that we'd be at work, but it's going to be more likely the 22nd of March?
No, a little bit.
Sorry, I'm just thinking it was changed. I think it was, about the 13th or 14th of March. With it's still allowing 3 days from when the auditor sign off and going back. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, of some point, it's gone back probably a couple of weeks from a risk management perspective. That doesn't overly affect the position here in terms of hitting June. We're still hitting for June. June's the date that we've got to do it by. But I think the critical thing is, from my perspective, we're thinking about our community. 2 weeks and getting this out in that third week of March still gives good time for consultation and above all, good time for councillors to think about on the feedback and develop the long-term plan.
The 18th of March council meeting that we're bringing the CD to, and following that we'll commence formal consultation on the 24th of March for the statutory time period.
Right, which then gives essentially May, the month of May, to be able to council to cogitate and think about the process. Beck, you got a point, please?
I was just going to ask, and it's more a management question rather than thank you to the lady that's prepared it. The 20 on that page now, which is again page 28, it's talking. It still says to be confirmed, and a meeting on the 28th of January and a finance and performance meeting on February. Are those dates going to be confirmed tomorrow? Because that's not, it's next month, and so would be good to know whether they are the dates we're believing. We're at this meeting at the moment, thank you.
So the council meeting schedule?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just talking to us about dates still to be confirmed. So
Yes,
we're not
so-
confirming them at this meeting.
No,
We're
you're
going to do
confirming
it
those tomorrow. Yes, and just keep in mind that this was prepared a while back for when we were going to have
Oh,
audit and
right, for the
risk, so
meeting
that
we were
needs
going
to
to have a month ago.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much for that, Charlotte. You've exhausted me. I don't have any more questions, which is great. I think this again is well done. Can we, no final call? No more questions. Thank you for the effort put into that, Pat. I think it is important that we look at this as a committee. I would want to characterise then that good progress has been made. Charlotte, probably no small part, a large part probably to you, but and your team. We've got audit lined up, which is good. We note some risks. We hope you still get a break over Christmas, and that was a wee bit of discussion around support if needed, but I don't sense that's the case at this point. And the ongoing relevance of the assumptions, which in noting this, we've had a chance to comment on today. So it's confidence inducing is really what I'm trying to reflect on here. So thank you, Pat. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Larry. Is there any discussion on the motion that we note this? There not being the case, I'll put the motion in, please, that we note the contents of this report. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. I think I'm right to say we're past 10 o'clock and most people would expect what in non-health and safety terms is a smoko break. Yeah. Okay. Right, welcome back. I can see that we need to just keep moving for some commitments, and people have anticipated the end of the meeting. Larry has just had to pop out for probably 10 minutes. He's got a video call he needs to be on, so he will send his apology to be back as quickly as he can. Right, if I could move then to the drinking water compliance report, that would be tremendous, please. And I'm not quite certain who's talking to. David, will you talk to us on this one, buddy?
So thank you, Chair. This is just to make the committee aware of the drinking water assessment that's been undertaken of the Gisborne supply, the Tikaraka and the Wharatutu supply. One of the things for me, very proud of the team. They've done a fantastic job with their compliance, and getting a 100% score is no mean feat. So I'm really proud of my team. Judith and the team have done a fantastic job to make sure that they have done everything that they needed to be doing to make sure that our drinking water supplies are all safe across those three supplies that we have. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. It is well, a lot of pages. Is actually the result is actually really good. Josh, do you have a question you want to raise?
I don't have a question, Mr. Chair, but I do want to commend the staff on achieving full compliance. Absolutely awesome report, and I found it very informative, and I'm happy to move this back.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Do we have a seconder, by the way? Thank you, Terry. Pat, do you have a question? Sorry, oh no, you in a second.
It is commendable to be 100% compliant. Well done.
So this is really important. Again, I just want to pause. We've had a bit of discussion about the role of the committee, and this is where getting reports from external agencies is part of us being able to be comfortable that risks are being managed. And let's face it, we well know it's too old hat now, but Havelock North was a wake-up call. And so it's important to note who this assurance is coming from. It's not, I mean, I would take a lot from David if he was to give me the assurance we're okay, but this is actually coming from our drinking water assessors. And that in itself is really important. Andy?
Is there confidence in a real low water situation, i.e. a drought, that the standards can be maintained?
Good question.
Through the chair, we have to meet the standards no matter what the water supply levels are like. We have been running Waipawa already this year. It's running right now to make sure that we have enough supply given the demand at this time of year. The dams are pretty much full. So we have got the backup supply of Waipawa if needed, but no matter what, as a drinking water supply, we can't drop the standards no matter if the level drops or not.
Slightly off piece, David, does that have an impact in terms of the LTP, in terms of renewal spend? Is there any particular challenge or issue there for us to maintain, to go back to build on Andy's point, to be able to maintain that status?
So through you, Chair, there's some capital expenditure that we're looking to in the future years of the long-term plan. One of those is the UV installation up at Wainaki. It's not a requirement at this stage, but it would be a future requirement that we would need to make sure we've made provision for and further out of our long-term plan.
Right, and the sort of dollar numbers around a UV plant?
Just under $1 million.
Yeah, okay. Which doesn't sound much, but and somebody's, and Pat, your words are ringing in my ear, the ratepayer has to pay, so I get that. Yes, Riet.
And it is a wonderful report, and it's great to see that we're all compliant. But when I read this, I was thinking about future risks coming our way, where with water reforms, the government might expect us to have drinking water so we're only talking about 2 small communities and our city. But going forward, and already for us, it's a big job and a lot of money to keep compliance going. And another risk that's just sitting in the back of my head is that with all water reforms happening, this might be coming our way for 7 other townships that we are in charge of. So that's something we should be thinking about, and thinking about that possible risk and the financial implications for our community. So that's just my thoughts when I read it. It's great, but we might have a lot coming our way if the water reforms go ahead.
And again, I think we've already marked that I think this is very fertile ground for our risk review, and with some, I think this is a, you know, we have, and it was raised quite appropriately, that Three Waters reform is a topic, but actually it does need to be sort of burst out into some of those individual aspects like that did it go? Yes, Pat.
I just want to support the comment the Mayor made. I didn't do it before when it was raised earlier. I mean, it is so unrealistic for the government to think that we can justify and afford, and that the users can then afford reticulated supplies in small townships. And it's a huge issue. It will be a huge issue if they continue to pursue it, because we aren't the only place that has multiple small townships. So that issue, I mean, it's been talked about for 20 odd years since I was on the health board, how a tank supply and well-maintained spoutings are more help to our rural community than, because there will always be a parameter. Whatever this reticulated water supply for small townships looks like, it is never going to supply all of the people that are within a township.
Yeah.
And so it has just got many, many fish hooks. So we always ought to be pushing for supported, subsidised water tanks and some support, so people are responsible for their own as they are now, but some assistance around that. We need to keep that in front of the powers that be at regional meetings in Wellington.
Thank you. Yes. Sharon, it's Sandra, sorry. Yes, hi, Sandra.
Apologise for that. If you'll beg my indulgence as a guest councillor.
No, you're welcome. Any councillor is welcome.
Given we are in audit and risk, I would suggest your comments around the long-term plan should include in its most earliest statement that water security for us as an organisation and indeed as a region should be in the very earliest bullet points of any document that we write for this region. So I'll just leave it with that. But water security in its widest sense, right down to the security and safety of our drinking water.
Yes.
But equally, our economic wellness, our social wellness, and our environmental wellness all hinges on water.
Thank you, Sandra. That's, sorry, Sharon, sorry, Sandra. No, sorry. I think my eyesight must be failing. Sorry about that. Look, I absolutely take on board your point. And I mean, in some sense, you've just helped flesh out some of really what was behind my question. We've got 3 compliant systems, and you've all helped me in a way that doesn't surprise me, expand actually what are the nature of the risks around our water. And I'm also conscious that if we talk long enough about water, we'll start talking about the costs of the national policy statement, fresh water, in terms of even probably the pressure on your rates for next year. So the water stuff is highly significant. So agree entirely with your point. Thank you. Right, so we've blown up. We've sort of expanded the discussion on actually what is a great report to something that is broader, which is good. I think Josh, you have moved this, and I think Terry, is there any discussion on the motion? We'll just check what the motion is. I presume it's just to receive the report or to note the report. I'll put it then, please, that we note the report. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. I just wonder if we could perhaps just ask you to take back to your staff our appreciation too. I suspect you guys would be the first to know if we were under substantial boil water notices or there was some form of defect, let alone public health scares. So actually, we should just acknowledge your team that we have got such a good result. That is absolutely superb. Righty, I think that has got us to the end of our open agenda. So if we thank you, it moves that we go into public exclusion. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Pat. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried.